Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Chase Vernon.
I swear, I'm going to figure out how to actually get this to tune out. Thursday, I'm doing it. I'm going to spend my whole entire day trying to figure out how to get that to slowly, trickle away instead of just boom, like end it right there. What's going on, guys? Welcome on into Fantasy Intervention. We got another live episode coming at you guys for the Waiver Wires Week 12. Very, very excited to do this. We're gonna give this a little test run. We're going to talk about some waiver wires, but we're kind of going to do it a little bit differently than how we've done it in the past. We are actually joined today by Nate. What's going on, Nate? How you doing?
Good, man. How are you doing today?
Doing very, very well. And then, of course, we're bringing in Chef, right? James over there from the Tilt is Real, right? Tilt
yeah, man.
Yeah, nailed
and
that.
The Fantasy Six Pack here at Join Our Circle _
Of course, man. So, I'm sitting there on Mondays, and I have my day completely filled up because I'm going over the DFS for Monday's slate. I'm getting everything prepared for the week, trying to make sure that, we have all of our sponsorships in line, like everything's ready to go. So my Mondays are completely slam-packed. So I wake up Tuesday, and I just grind the waivers. Like, I'm sitting there looking at every little aspect I could possibly do. Meanwhile, I noticed that, as soon as I wake up, FF_Chef over there is actually already has like everything pretty much done for the Tilt is Real, right? For all the waivers. Like he has it out.
I was up early grinding. I figured I'd knock it out early today.
Yeah. So I decided, I was like, hey, I got an idea. Let's go ahead and tear everything that he's done to little pieces and, just pretty much just criticize everything. No, I'm just kidding. No, I wanted to kind of dissect his list, and I'm going to pull it up right here. I wanted to kind of break down his stuff and talk about, some of those guys on the waiver wire and dissect if we'd actually want this player that he brought up or if we would actually pivot over to a different guy, whether we're streaming quarterbacks or whether we feel like there's a more, valuable position out there for each position or a valuable guy for each position, as I should say. So Nate was doing a great job, absolutely killing it with us on our Tuesdays prior to this. So I was like, Nate, let's get this guy in. Nate was stoked on it. And honestly, I love the way that this is lined up. I love the way that the show sheet is looking right now, and I'm excited. So real quick, before we do get started with this episode, I do want, Chef, you to introduce yourself, talk about, what you're doing out there and, where your stuff is, where your content is.
What's going on, everybody? I'm James Crease. You can find me at Twitter at _FF_Chef. I'm doing some work for Ball Blast Football. I'm a writer over there. I'm doing some dynasty work for them. With you guys at Fantasy Intervention, doing the Fantasy Six Pack weekly with One of a Kind and Corey Spala. And then I host my own podcast as well, the Tilt is Real Fantasy Football Podcast. We do 3 shows a week. Our busiest one is the Sunday Tilt. We also do a normal Wednesday show as well. It's been fun, man. This is my first year getting into fantasy, and I guess I'm doing something right because you asked me to come on. So I'm excited to be here.
No, absolutely, man. This is something I swear I'm very excited to see how our group over there at Join Our Circle _ is progressing. And of course, Nate over there is part of Join Our Circle. Where else can we find you, Nate? What's going on? Nate, you there?
He's muted.
Nate, you muted yourself, man.
I did, man. I'm trying to cancel out that fuzz. So I got a weekly column, comes out every Tuesday night with In Between Media, which is at IBT_media, and then in-betweenmedia.com. We have a DFS article. It comes out every Wednesday I contribute to, and then we've got our Tuesday night stream that we do every week, and then it comes out on Wednesday as a pod. I've got a quick hit video that comes out every Sunday for some last minute pivots, and then all the Join Our Circle stuff. Just grinding away, man, all over the place.
It's a lot of stuff, man. It's a lot of stuff. We got a lot of stuff going on over there.
We do.
Oh, God. All right. So we have Monday's show, which is the DFS show. We got 2 shows on Tuesday. I've got the injury report with Steffi coming up here in a little bit. Wednesday, I have 3 shows because I'm actually guesting on one at 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Thursday, we normally have a show out there, 2 shows, I believe. And then, Friday, we have our DFS show. Sunday morning, we do our live starter sits. Like, we have a lot of stuff going on, guys. It's absolutely insane. Make sure you guys go check it out at joinourcircle_. Not to mention the fact that we also have quick shots over there. We have the 6-pack and everything. But let's go ahead and dive into this waiver wire show. Right before we do, I do want to give a huge shout out to our brand new sponsor, Trophy Smack. That's right. We got a new sponsor, Trophy Smack, guys. If you guys go over there, right, and you guys go buy a trophy from Trophy Smack, all right? You go purchase a trophy, use promo code CIRCLE. When you go to check out, they'll actually send you a free ring, which is actually valued at $59.99 or $60 essentially. And you get that comes in with it. So make sure you guys go check out TrophySmack.com so you can throw that trophy in all your league mates' faces when you win this year. I don't care if you throw it in their face, you hit them over the back of the head, whatever you want to do. And then you also have the ring for free too. So give that to the last place guy as a consolation prize. Absolutely love it, guys. So let's go ahead and dive into this episode, and I'm going to pull up your thing that you put together. What would I even say? How would I call it?
It's called the Waiver Wire Hero Sheet, and this is based off of FF One of a Kind's fantasy football team name that he has in our home league. He's always been called the Waiver Wire Heroes. And we wanted to do something for the waiver wire, and here it is, man. It's the Waiver Wire Heroes, and we've been hitting about 80 to 85% of these guys on a weekly basis. So I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about them.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be fun. So we did piece this together, right? This is what we're looking at, and we're actually gonna be sitting over here. We're gonna be looking at Kirk Cousins, right? This is your quarterback that you're picking up, and so Nate and I decided, hey, we're either going to tear these guys down or we're going to build them up pending on how we feel. So before we do that, what was your reason to adding Kirk Cousins on your waiver wire?
I mean, the Panthers are allowing 17.9 fantasy points per game, and mainly you've lost some quarterbacks this season, especially with Joe Burrow going out this past week. You may be really thin in a tough spot. Can you trust Matt Ryan? Now maybe losing Julio Jones again. You don't have Gardner Minshew maybe coming back, and he has to face the Browns. So I think mainly these quarterbacks are, yes, they're middle of the pack per se, but the Panthers allowing 17.9 fantasy points per game to the quarterback position. And I think if the Panthers can keep this game in contention, which I think they will, with or without Teddy B at the wheel, I think Kirk can quietly do a decent job against them. I mean, he's sitting 10th overall in passing touchdowns with 20. Most people don't realize that. He had a great week this past week, 314 yards, 3 touchdowns, 22 completions on 30 attempts. And I think if the Panthers can hold up, he can get the job done again for him.
Yeah, this was something as to where I'm actually going to be at the opposite end of the spectrum. So we're going to start this out hot. This is a great way to start this out, right? Kirk Cousins for me is somebody that I can't sit there and get behind as a waiver wire ad. And primarily, if you guys listen to the show, you guys understand, like, I'm somebody that does not add quarterbacks on the waiver very often. Like, it has to be somebody that's really, really sharp, somebody that, maybe there's not too many options when it comes to streaming quarterbacks. So for me to sit there and put, fab dollars towards quarterbacks because there are so many out there, it's really tough for me to get behind certain guys. And this week with Kirk Cousins, he's up against Carolina. Now, Carolina, I came into the season thinking that I was going to attack this Carolina defense week in and week out. But the reality is they've actually been relatively good up against the quarterbacks so far this year. They've only allowed 3 games of 300-plus passing yards. And 2 of those 3 games, keep in mind, did come up against Brady and Mahomes. So it's something as to where I'm not sitting there wanting to play Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins is essentially either needs high efficiency, which Carolina is not allowing completely, or he needs volume. And teams are running all over Carolina. Unless that is, you're the Lions without DeAndre Swift, who couldn't, run for 50 yards or whatever it was this past game. That was brutal. So I don't see Cousins getting the volume because I think it's going to be a Dalvin Cook game. Meanwhile, it's something to where, the efficiency just is not there for me. So this next guy that's on your list that we're going to talk about, I would much rather play, in this position. But yeah, I'm not going to get behind Kirk Cousins this week, especially since it's a playoff run. I just can't trust him, and that's something that's huge when it comes to getting into the playoffs. Obviously with streaming quarterbacks, you are kind of playing week to week and you're playing very risky stuff. But Kirk Cousins' floor is way too low for me. Getting this close to the playoffs, I don't want anything to do with him. Don't waste your fab dollars on him.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chase. I just don't trust Cousins, and that offense runs through Dalvin Cook. And Carolina's got a weak run defense, like you said, and I just think that. I can't see him having more than 25 attempts this week against Carolina. I think you're going to look at Cook getting most of the touches. I wouldn't touch him. That's me.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and bring up this next guy. All right, let's go ahead and bring up this next guy who I am completely behind. And that's going to be, of course,
Mr. Derek Carr.
Derek Carr. So Derek Carr is criminally underowned, right? So tell us why you want to play him this upcoming week.
Oh, man, he's playing against the Falcons. They're last in fantasy points allowed to the QB, averaging 25.9 fantasy points per game. Can we say that he has Darren Waller? Great matchup versus Deion Jones, who was giving up 13.3 fantasy points per game to the tight end. And Atlanta has a tougher ranked run defense than most people think. They're actually ranked 4th against the run. And they're giving up a lot of points to the wide receiver, man. And I think they just allowed Taysom Hill to throw for 233 on 18 completions for 23 attempts. I mean, come on, if Taysom Hill can do it, Derek Carr can definitely do it.
You want to take this one, Nate, or do you want me to start this one out?
Yeah, I'll go, man. Yeah, I love Derek Carr. He's looked more comfortable in the pocket to me lately, and it looks like he's connecting a little bit more with Waller. They seem more in sync, and Nelson Aguilar as well. And I think that's a big upside for him. And I think that, Carr, they've got a great schedule moving forward. The next 2 weeks, they've got Atlanta and the Jets. I see no reason why I wouldn't grab him. I definitely grab him over Cousins. I think for me, if you're streaming quarterbacks right now and he's out there, he's my top grab.
I love Derek Carr. Absolutely love him. Falcons, Jets, Chargers. That's their schedule over the next 3 weeks, like you mentioned. And Ruggs still has not broken out yet, which is absolutely insane. Now, me personally, I don't think that Ruggs is 100% quite yet. He's there. He's close there, but he has to break out in one of these 3 games. So sitting there and looking at, not only Carr's efficiency, but primarily his volume, in 5 out of 7 games where Carr has attempted 30-plus passes, he hits at least 19 fantasy points, at least 19, which is a great floor. That's good for quarterback 1, right? So the thing is with Carr this week, and you brought it up, James, was the fact that you cannot run on the Falcons. 89 yards is the most amount that the Falcons have allowed to a running back on the ground so far this season. And up against week 6 or since week 6, they've only allowed 66. That's the most they've allowed to a running back. So the Raiders are going to be forced to throw. Like we talked about, his efficiency has been there. The volume will now be there. And of course, Ruggs always has that potential to break out. If he does end up breaking out one of these 3 games, you're talking about taking Derek Carr to the whole next level. When we sit there and we look at the quarterbacks, I believe it was quarterback 9 to quarterback 23 are within 3 points in points per game when it comes to differentiation between, those guys. So anytime that you have a chance to get a quarterback who might be in the back end, but can get a few more points per game because of the situation or the narrative, dude, you take a shot on that. And Derek Carr is absolutely the dude that I want to do this with. Going into the playoffs, not only does he have a safe floor with these matchups, he also has tremendous upside. Stream this quarterback. I'm actually going to spend a little bit of fab on Carr if I don't have him, but if you listen to the show, you probably already do. So let's go with our next guy over here. And it's the last quarterback on your sheet, and that's going to be Daniel Jones, Chef. So what you got for Daniel Jones? Hit me with it.
Well, I am a resident Giants fan, so I have a little bit of a bias with this guy, but I like Daniel Jones if one of those other 2 aren't available. He's not my best favorite pick overall, but he's going up against Cincinnati. They're 19th against the quarterback, allowing 19.1 fantasy points per game. And they're 7th worst against wide receiver, giving up 26.5 fantasy points per game. I think with past 2 straight games with no turnovers. Daniel Jones has turned a new leaf heading towards the second half of his season. He's got some sweet matchups down the road, obviously starting this week with Cincinnati, Seattle next week, Arizona, and Cleveland. I'm not so sure. I mean, if you get Derek Carr and Daniel Jones, if you're a streamer guy, I think Daniel Jones could be a great grab and stash, especially with his run game. He's ranked currently 3rd overall with 384 rushing yards. That's more than Russell, Cam, and Josh Allen. So, yeah, Daniel Jones.
So, once again, I'm actually going to hop onto the other side of this. So, I loved your Derek Carr take, not big on your Kirk Cousins. And honestly, I'm not going to be huge on Daniel Jones this week, or moving forward, because of the fact that Daniel Jones, like you brought up, a tremendous amount of his production has come in the running game. And that's normally great if you have a running quarterback, right? Because he offers that upside. But pretty much the majority of his yards on the ground, I believe it's almost like 40% or so, have come in 2 games. One of those was on a busted run. What was it, like 80-yard run where he tripped at the tail end of it?
Yeah.
Absolutely brutal. But that's not something that I want to, have a major, I guess, share in when it comes to the playoff run. Now, if I sit there, right, and I take the stats from these 2 games where he produced through the roof, right? If I don't even include, right, the passing at all, we just take the rushing yards, and we don't even take the touchdown that he scored, right? If you combine those 2 games, you would get more fantasy points from those 2 games just on the ground, not including the touchdown, which is 15.8 points, than you would 6 of the other 8 games that he's played in so far this year, because he's not putting up points. Like, he is below 15.8 points per game in 6 of the other 8 games so far this year. Like I said, you have the rushing upside, but unless your name is, Murray or Taysom Hill so far this year, I really don't want to rely on the sporadic production from the legs and from the rushing upside with the playoffs on the line. I want touchdowns, baby. Like, I want touchdowns. And the most that Jones has thrown so far this season in a game is 2 touchdowns. That's it. Jones has just as many games with 0 passing touchdowns as he does 1 or more. So it's something as to where I would much rather stream a guy like Jared Goff up against the 49ers or PJ Walker up against Minnesota, other than, rather than take a shot with Daniel Jones, because his upside isn't even that great. His upside is 22 points so far this season. That's not a great return. You're talking about a significant risk with a very limited upside, and his receivers cannot get separation. So I'm going to fade Daniel Jones, not only for this week, but also for the upcoming season. I'm going to say do not waste your fab dollars. I saw Daniel Jones on almost every single site as a potential ad this week. I'm saying don't do it. What are you thinking, Nate? Where are you stand on this?
Sorry, Chef. I'm with him, man. I'm looking at his stats in Sleeper. His 2 biggest weeks were against Philly, and he can't play Philly every week. I mean, his highest rushing output, his highest fantasy output was against Philly. Cincinnati is kind of a sexy matchup, I guess, this week if you're going to stream. But it's kind of a last resort for me. The PJ Walker one, that's interesting, Chase. I kind of like that. I was high on him beginning of the season. I thought he'd end up starting over Teddy, and he looked good last week. But yeah, I just don't buy Daniel Jones. It's too much rush, not enough pass. He's not throwing enough passing touchdowns. I don't see it the rest of the season. I mean, they've got Cincinnati, Seattle, Arizona, Cleveland. That's kind of a tough slate. I mean,
yeah, very tough.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there and it's something where I like Daniel Jones overall as a player. I like him as a dynasty asset, but we're going to talk about another guy that I'm much more interested for the New York Giants here in a minute. And Daniel Jones for me is a fade in this situation, just because not only his schedule, but his floor is just absolutely brutal. So let's go on to this next one, right? And we're going to hop onto the running back side of things. And yeah, I mean, we're pretty much gonna start it out with the guy that, we wanted to bring up. So let's go ahead, since we're transitioning over from Daniel Jones, and let's talk about Wayne Gallman. Why are you sitting there saying add Wayne Gallman?
I mean, Wayne Gallman shouldn't be available on your waiver wires, but yet he is with being available in 44.7% of the leagues. And this percentage on this sheet, it has to do with a consensus of 3 formats, including ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper. So there's a lot going on here. So he may be a little bit more available in some leagues than others, but at 44.7%, there's no way that Wayne Gallman shouldn't be on your roster. Over the past 4 weeks, he is the PPR running back number 3, averaging 15.8 fantasy points in that time frame.
Yeah.
Since he, like you said, they have a poorest run defense, 21st, allowing 19.4 fantasy points per game. And we saw what Gallman could do with a full workload. Against the Eagles, 18 carries for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. The guy's had 5 touchdowns in the last 4 games, and 4 games with double-digit fantasy points. I think the Giants are rested and ready to go.
Yeah, let me go ahead and add on to that too. You talked about the 5 touchdowns over the past 4 games. The Bengals, who they're playing, have also allowed 3 touchdowns to the running back in the past 4 games as well. So this is the perfect storm, like you were talking about. But yeah, go ahead. Did you have anything else to add to that?
No, man. I think I covered. There's no reason why you can't get Gallman this week and play him.
Yeah, this is a move that I can completely get behind. I mean, 100%. And I wasn't big on Gallman. It wasn't the fact that I hated Gallman. I just hated that offensive line over there. And they've made some adjustments. When we're talking about the Giants, they made adjustments and they're getting things figured out. They got 3 rookies out there who are, getting in rotations and seeing a lot more snaps as of late. So we talk about that offensive line, it's improving. And so is that defense. Meanwhile, Joe Burrow is going to be out, obviously. Sorry, Taylor, if you're listening. But yeah, Joe Burrow is going to be out, right? So the Bengals aren't going to be able to move the ball. I'm looking for the Giants to have short field positions, like constantly this entire game. And Gallman could see the end zone. Like you mentioned, the 5 touchdowns over the 4 games. And Cincinnati's been bleeding lately, when it comes to allowing touchdowns to the running back. This game has Gallman written all over it. So if you're in a tough spot, go grab him. I'm not saying, start him as an RB1, but you can start him and expect like mid RB2 numbers, even, late RB2 numbers to an extent. I think he has a great floor, and I think that his ceiling, although capped, is still up there as an RB2. How are you feeling about that, Nate?
Yeah, I'm the same boat. I mean, that offensive line's just gotten so much better, and he's looked good behind that offensive line. They've shown they're going to use him. I mean, he's averaging he's between 10 and 18 carries over the last 4 weeks. The yards are there. The 5 touchdowns are there. Cincinnati's going to give him a short field, like you said, Chase, all day. And we don't like Daniel Jones, but I love the running game there. And I think he's a guy I'd want to definitely get in. And it is crazy that he's not rostered higher.
Yeah, that's absolutely absurd. But hey, this has a lot to do with ESPN, Yahoo. Not everybody plays on Sleeper and MFL. So
I think it has to do with them going on a bye week too, and a lot of players out there are dropping him going into the bye. So yeah, he's left over, and now's your chance to pick him up.
Great point. If he's out there, and we actually talked about it on the post waiver wire show, where hey, Gallman, if he ends up getting dropped, you got to pick him up. That was last week. So I love the take on this. Let's go with another guy that I think a lot of people are higher on than I am. And it's kind of funny because I was sitting there and I was all over LaMichael. I was all over Frank Gore when everybody else was all over LaMichael Pirine. And, it's not that I hated LaMichael Pirine or anything, but I was like, Frank Gore's still going to get these touches. But yeah, I mean, you have Frank Gore over there. So tell us why, you're looking at Frank Gore.
I mean, he's more on the bottom side of this list. He's not one of my top guys that I would like to add. But yeah, with LaMichael Pirine headed to IR, he's going to be the main guy out there. And we saw what he did against the Chargers in week 11, 15 carries for 61 yards and a touchdown. He's not the best option, but he is an option nonetheless. Miami's 23rd versus the running back. They're allowing 19.6 fantasy points per game. And, we just saw Melvin Gordon put up 15 for 84 and 2 touchdowns versus Miami. He's no Melvin Gordon. Don't get it wrong, folks. He is old. But he is Gase's favorite, and he probably could be relied on for at least a low end RB3, RB4 for your roster.
Nate, you want to take this one next?
Man, he's a year younger than me.
That's crazy. That's funny, man.
Dude, when you get up here and you see some of these guys, you're like, oh man, 35-year-old wide receiver. This guy's old as balls. I'm like, oh. Well, I mean, yeah, it's fair, but I have issues with the Jets just in general because of Adam Gase. Like, you could look at this Gore match and be like, it's a great matchup for Gore. He's been using him in this way earlier in the season. This is a smash play. Then you come out and they run the ball 3 times and they just air it out all day. Like, it's so risky for me. He could have a great game. I mean, he's been, not great. He had 16 points against the Chargers last week. I just don't see him repeating that the rest of the season. I think that was like his top matchup. I don't see it. What do you think, Chase?
I'm like, it's weird for me because I don't love it, and I was okay with Frank Gore. But, I mean, dude, he had 6 carries inside the red zone this past week, and he came away with 1 touchdown. Like, that's it. And that's his first touchdown of the season. So it's brutal, man. And with this game, you either need him to catch a pass or get in the end zone to get double digits up against Miami, whose defense is playing out of their minds as of late. So I'm going to fade this pickup. I don't think that you should waste your fab. And I think it could end up imploding your team. If you need 6 points, great, but who needs 6 points? You need double-digit points, especially at this point, making a run towards the playoffs. So I'm going to fade it, but I do have a stash out there for you guys. The guy that I want to throw the back into my roster and just see what happens, because, of course, we had LaMichael Pirine go down. And that's Ty Johnson. All right? Like, I'm not saying go out there and throw, 20% or 30% of your fab at it or anything, but if you got a few bucks, on the back end, or if you're not a high waiver wire priority, I would take a shot at him. Like, I would throw $1 or $2 at him and just see if you can get him, prior to anybody else picking up on him. I mean, the Jets up against Miami, they're going to need some explosive plays from the running back position. And he did see 5 targets or four targets this past week?
It was 6.
6? Okay. So I think he crowded 4 of them or something for 17 yards, which isn't great. But if he got 4 points off of, receptions for PPR leagues, that's huge. And that's, half a game. Right. So if they actually have a chance to kind of devise plays for him, that's great. And then when you look forward to the schedule, like in 3 weeks from now, they play the Seahawks. You can't run against the Seahawks. I know that people think that the running backs do bad up against the Seahawks because they have to pass, but their efficiency is still like bottom level efficiency. And that's not normally the case up against teams who you normally have to pass against, because you can call draw plays, because you can set up, different opportunities where a running back can get that 10 yards because the defense wasn't expecting it. Still, the Seahawks have not been bad up against the running backs. They've actually been really, really good, but they struggle up against pass catching backs. So Ty Johnson, for those deeper leagues, and even for leagues where, you have an empty roster spot, maybe somebody got hurt, but your roster's solid, you want to take an upside, chance at a guy, then I think that Ty Johnson is actually going to be a great, dart throw towards the end of your rosters. Now, let's go ahead and go with your next guy, who at first, looking at this slate and looking at the guys that were open and looking at all the news going on, I was actually huge on this guy at first, very big on him. So let's go ahead and talk about Gus Edwards.
Yeah, Gus Edwards, man. It's like a perfect storm for Gus Edwards. He finally gets the backfield all to himself, with Dobbins and Ingram out on the COVID reserve list, and opportunity knocks. And we saw him last time up against, but he gets Pittsburgh. So that's the scary part. He gets Pittsburgh. But if we remember back in week 8, he finished as the RB14 up against Pittsburgh when he carried the ball for 16 carries, 87 yards, and a touchdown. He averaged 5.1 yards per carry. So I don't want to overspend on Gus because he may only be a 1-week fill-in. But if you're in a pinch, he may be the bulldog you want in the dogfight this week going up against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, this is bittersweet for me, right? Because it's the Gus boss, man. He's finally getting a shot. This is it. This is his chance. And then, oh, shit, they got to play the Steelers. So it's oh, man, do I really want to play Gus Edwards up against the Steelers? And looking at it, like I said, it was going to be my favorite pickup of the week. Then I saw the Steelers. But then, it's playing with my emotions. Now it's bipolar. I'm excited. Then I'm oh. And then I'm excited again because I'm looking at it. And Edwards had his best week of the year so far up against the Steelers. Earlier this year, back a few weeks ago, 26 snaps. He got 16 carries. He had 87 yards and a touchdown. That's sick. You want that. So that's encouraging. But I'm not going to go out there and say play him over a stud. All right. You have to realize that the Steelers are one of the best defenses up against the run. And honestly, I'm only breaking this waiver wire glass in case of emergencies. That's I'm not going to sit there and waste a ton of fab on him. The COVID stuff, with it being this early in the week, there's a good chance they still get to play next week, correct? Yeah. So, I'm not doing it. But if Gus Edwards is booked or stashed for you guys, if he's already picked up, I got a name for you guys in deeper leagues, and that's Justice Hill, right? God, we finally get to see Justice Hill. Once again, it's the Steelers, so I can't get too excited. But there's something weird going on with the Steelers, all right? Like, this is weird, like really weird. So the Steelers have only seen the Steelers have seen 3 or less receptions by a running back in 7 of their 10 games. That's weird to me, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense because the Steelers are winning. They're undefeated. Why are they not passing the running back? Like, doesn't that seem a little bit weird to you guys? I mean, they faced Hunt. They faced Miles Sanders. They faced Gordon. They faced David Johnson. They faced J.K. Dobbins. They faced Zeke and Pollard, who only had a combined 3 receptions. Like, what is going on? Why are teams not hitting their running back out of the backfield? I understand this linebacking core they're fast, they're very athletic, but it's like, man, like, what's going on? So I'm hoping that Justin Hill sees some targets out of the backfield, but yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe they just leave the running back in to help block because the Baltimore Ravens do blitz so much, but it still just seems weird to me.
I got a crazy stat on Justice Hill going on right now. In every game this year, he's only seen 1 target for 3 yards, and he's had 0 attempts. He was downgraded to the practice squad, and since then has been on special teams. So I cannot get behind Justice Hill. I'd rather get behind Gus Edwards if I'm in a pinch. If DeAndre Swift doesn't start this week.
Oh yeah, this is a
on
stash.
The concussion protocol. Yeah. But you have J.K. Dobbins coming back. It's not like he's injured. He's out on COVID. So I don't think it's a physicality where you need to spend money on Justice Hill because we've seen Justice Hill, and there's a reason why he was on special teams and not in the starting roster.
We haven't seen Justice Hill yet.
Oh gosh.
No, go ahead. What are you thinking over there, Nate?
I'm curious about the Justice Hill thing. I don't really trust Gus Edwards. I'm only grabbing him if I'm like I have to get somebody so I don't have a 0 in my running back slot. Justice Hill is interesting. I'm kind of looking at him as a deeper stash as well. But I mean, with Harbaugh and the way he's managed that backfield this year, we can see Justice Hill with 25 carries and 150 yards this week. He's just been so weird about it. It's like you're watching Dobbins, like he's the better back. Yet he keeps rolling out Ingram until last week. So I don't know. Edwards is risky for me, but Justice Hill, I'm stashing in Dynasty. I've already grabbed him a couple of places. He's a guy I want to hold.
Keep in mind, they can cut Mark Ingram, I believe, after this season, saved $10 million or $8 million. I think he's owed $10 million, but I'm not sure what his dead cap is. I think it's 2. And then they can also move on from Gus Edwards this upcoming offseason as well. So Justice Hill is the RB2 over there for Baltimore, just as a heads up. Potential RB2 in Baltimore.
Potential.
So, yeah, he's definitely a stash for me, especially in deeper leagues. And if you need some crazy ass thing to happen, and you don't have anybody on those waivers. I mean, Justice Hill could give you that upside, and that breakaway speed could end up presenting you with a big play. So, like I said, that's a deeper play. But let's go ahead and get away from that one, and let's go with your next guy. All right, we are on to Salvon Ahmed, who I've been shouting about for 2 weeks now, and nobody's listening to me. And now all of a sudden, he can catch the ball too. Let's go ahead and pick him up. What's going on? Why do you feel about Salvon Ahmed?
Yeah, like you said, over the past two games, over 12 PPR fantasy points. Why wouldn't you want him on your team? And then last week we saw it even with Breida back in the fold. He still got the passing work, 5 for 31 on 6 targets. So I think Gaskin has at least 1 more week, maybe 2 left on IR. And Salvon Ahmed, they're going up against the Jets. They're terrible, allowing 19.3 fantasy points to the running back, and he's going to get the full workload. I'm behind Salvon Ahmed this week.
You want to take this one, Nate?
Yeah, man. I've been hot on him too. I love Salvon Ahmed, and I think his upside here is huge. It's hard to believe that he's still available anywhere. I mean, especially with as much as, I guess we've been talking about him, but a lot of people have been talking about him. I mean, seriously, he had 6 targets last week, 5 catches, 31 yards against Denver. Another 12 carries. I mean, they're looking at him in the end zone. And I think next week against the Jets, juicy. If he can grab him rest of season, even with Gaskin back, I think he's earned at least a look when Gaskin's back. I mean, he's not going to get nearly as much work, but he'll still get some, and he still might be slightly fantasy relevant. I don't know. I mean, I love him, Chase. I love him.
You guys, everybody missed out on to pick him up 2 weeks ago, like I was talking about. So, it is what it is. You guys missed out on this opportune time. Now we talk about Gaskin being back, but he's still worth a pickup for a week or two. I just wouldn't blow your entire. Now, like I said, I've been shouting for 2 weeks, and he is the real deal, and he's shown his ability to catch passes. It's something where, I loved him coming out of college. His combine completely destroyed him. He landed with the 49ers. I thought that he would end up competing, for a not a starting job, but at least a roster spot with the 49ers. JaMychal Hasty took that from him, so he ended up in, Miami. I ended up dropping in a bunch of dynasty leagues because I didn't see how he was going to be relevant in Miami. Then Gaskin gets hurt. Jordan Howard gets cut. Matt Breida just, is hurt and can't play even remotely close to what he did with the 49ers. So Ahmed got his chance, and he's been impressing. So right now he's owned in 66% of ESPN leagues, so he's probably not out there. But yeah, if he's out there, I'd at least grab him. You got one more week with him. So now you guys did miss. Well, I should say, James, you missed. You whiffed on the biggest waiver wire of the week at the running back position. All right, I'm going to let you guys guess on this. But he's back in time for the playoffs to help people win leagues again, right? 39 snaps this past week, of course, with the primary running back going down. And I'm kind of kidding about him winning leagues because, it's something as to where he was utilized so much more in the red zone prior to this year. And the running backs as a whole were used so much more in the red zone prior to this year. So they're not used near as much anymore, but he is definitely absolutely worth a pickup. Can you guys guess who this guy is? The other two running backs constantly get hurt.
If you're going to say Sony Michel, man, I'm leaving the show.
You're close.
It's James White.
White, man.
And he was on my list.
I don't see him under.
Yeah,
this.
he was. Did he make the flex spot?
I don't see him.
Did he make the flex spot? Did I leave him
he
off?
did,
Oh,
man.
he did. Oh, I missed it. I'm an idiot.
Get off of it. It's James White, bro. Come on.
Oh, I'm the idiot. I am the buffoon. I cannot believe I missed it.
And then let me talk about him for a little bit.
Go ahead, talk about him because
last
said
week,
my piece.
Last week with Rex Burkhead in the game for the beginning of the game, he scored 14.3 fantasy points. He had 6 receptions for 64 receiving yards. And obviously Burkhead is out for the rest of the season. And that is the main reason why he is on this list and should be on this list going forward. I mean, his availability is going to get soaked up like a sponge. White already has 33 receptions on 41 targets. And Burkhead had 33 targets in 9 games. So he's looking for a heavy dose of passing work. Harris is has only received 4 targets all season. And I think James White, man, if you can get him on your roster, and I was 38%. I mean, come on, he should have been owned. He should be owned. And if he's still out there in your league, man, go and grab him.
He wasn't getting used prior to this, and Damian Harris was taking that spotlight. Meanwhile, Rex Burkhead was the guy getting all the touchdowns, so I can understand why he wasn't owned. I can completely 100% get behind him not being owned, but now he needs to be owned. You need to put a bid on him. He needs to be locked in there. Nate, you got any take on that?
You said everything I was going to say.
All right, let's go ahead and hop over to the wide receivers then. All right, your first wide receiver that you have up there is Michael Pittman. So tell us why we need to put Michael Pittman in, as if we actually need to, we need a lesson on this.
Yeah, right. Like you just said, you need a lesson. But I'll learn you though. Coming off of back-to-back weeks with at least 15 fantasy points, this guy's ranked number wide receiver 12 over those 2 weeks, averaging 17.4 fantasy points per game. And his first breakout game was against Tennessee. And let me guess, who do they play in week 12, Chase? Do they play Tennessee again?
They play Tennessee.
Oh, look at that. And then they go on and play Houston 2 times in weeks 13 and 15 and the Raiders in between that. He's definitely the number 1 option on his team, outscoring all the competition in the receiving department. And I think he's a star moving forward, especially in Dynasty as well.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. He went 7 for 8 for 101 yards last time they played. So, he also had a 20-something yard run as well. I traded Lockett this past week. We had a trade deadline in a Dynasty League, which I hate. I think it's really stupid. But I wanted to get Tyler Lockett. He's wide receiver 5 or 4 so far in the year. was trying to get Pittman and a second-round pick. The guy wasn't biting. Everybody else was kind of scared about Lockett because of the injury that he had going into the game, and I didn't want to miss out on moving him because I was a rebuilding team. I took over this team, and it was absolutely brutal when I first got it. So anyways, I traded away Lockett for Pittman and 2 third-round picks. That's how much I love Pittman. I think he's going to be a stud in the league. And by the way, right, he's going to be a wide receiver 1, by the way, in Dynasty Leagues. But in redraft, he is a must pick up. His schedule is as follows: Tennessee, Houston, right? Las Vegas, Houston again. And then he finishes out with Pittsburgh, who has been spotty against the wide receiver position. Oh, my God. I just got a little hard thinking about it. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's something as to where, like, all right, so earlier I was typing this out and I actually got hard. And so I had to put in the show sheet and say it like as if I was saying it for the first time, but I'm reading it again and I'm getting hard a second time. I'm getting a chub while reading the schedule for a second time today. Thank you, Pittman, for giving me my second chub of the day. How do you feel about it, Nate? Is he giving you a chub?
Yeah. I mean, 80+% snap share the last 3 weeks. 101 yards against Tennessee. Like you said, he's got Tennessee coming up again. Then we've got Houston, Vegas, Houston again. Indy's been a lot better than I thought they were going to be this year. A lot better. I just didn't think Rivers had anything left in the tank. He's got a little bit
coming out of nowhere.
Right.
Oh, he's
He looked
limping
so
along.
bad. He looked so bad at the beginning of the season, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's hit like 3 weeks in a row of 3 touchdowns or something like that. It's been insane.
Well, he's got a guy like Michael Pittman now.
Yes, he does.
I mean, where T.Y. Hilton was nowhere. I mean, he was relying on Zach Pascal for the most part. But with Michael Pittman, I mean, he's so dynamic and he's such a talented route runner. And it just seems like these last 3 weeks he's gotten in sync with Rivers. And I think the rest of the season, man, you've got to get him. I'm willing to spend, 20-30% fab on him.
Yeah, if he's out there, I'm going all in on him.
Definitely worth it. Yeah.
Checking everybody else's waivers.
Waiver wire.
Yeah, I'm checking everybody else's fab, and I'm going to make sure that I bid higher than the person that actually needs wide receiver. Like if I'm going in there and a team has more fab than somebody else does, but they have 6 wide receivers on their roster that are all studs, I'm not going to go and try and outbid him. But I'm going to look at each person's rosters that actually have fab left, and I'm going to make sure that I get him because he is a league winner with that schedule. I already have him in almost every league. So I'm not, I've been talking about him now for 2 weeks. I was like, he's come back healthy. He's got Tennessee. This is his breakout game. And boom, it happened. So yeah, I love Michael Pittman moving forward. It's something where I'm 100% behind him.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about your next wide receiver, Nelson Aguilar, who is another guy that we've been sitting there touting, making sure he's on your rosters, but yet he's still on the waivers out there. What's going on with Nelson Aguilar?
15.2%.
It's crazy.
Like, what are these people doing? I know people, and Ruggs was the big name coming in this year, and they had Brian Edwards coming in this year, and Aguilar, he's been resurrected in this Las Vegas Raiders offense. And he's going against Atlanta this week, 29th versus the wide receiver, allowing 29 fantasy points per game. We talked about Derek Carr earlier. If you can get him and Derek Carr and match him up, and you got yourself a nice little stack going on there. Last week against Kansas City, he had 6 for 88 and a touchdown. That was his 6th touchdown of the season. And it's his job to lose, man. He's got 73% of the snap share, and Edwards maybe next year, but right now it's all about Nelson Aguilar.
Dude, 100%. He's fixed his drop issue, and that was a big thing for him previously. Maybe not fixed it, but he's done better with his drops. He's only dropped 4 passes so far this season, so it's still not great. But his explosive playmaking ability and his ability to get open, is huge, absolutely huge. I mean, his yards of separation per target are let's see, 1.5 yards of separation per target, which makes Derek Carr feel right at home. He wants to make sure his receivers are open. And Nelson Aguilar is creating that gap for him. So I absolutely love him. But yeah, I mean, when we sit there and we talk about actually putting money into him, like how is he not owned? It makes me a little bit nervous that his stat output has looked like Morse code in terms of his touchdowns. Like he's scored every other week since week 5. But moving forward, his schedule is insane. Falcons, Jets, Colts, Dolphins, Chargers. Like that's the remaining schedule. And I'll take that all day long. And he's less owned, by the way, than Henry Ruggs is. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane.
All right, what you got?
I love Aguilar. I grabbed him a few weeks ago, and I mean, he's 2 weeks he's won me a matchup. 1 week he lost me when he had the 3 points against Denver, 2.3 points against Denver. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, he's catching the ball. He's getting good separation. Derek Carr loves him. I love Derek Carr. There's no reason not to love Aguilar. And especially, I mean, if you're driving towards the playoffs, he's a guy I think you can get with that schedule. He's gonna be helpful for sure. I love him.
All right, let's go with your next guy then, Sterling Shepard. Why do you want to pick up Sterling Shepard, James?
Well, I mean, he's going against the Bengals. So why not? And I know we talked about with Wayne Gallman, it's going to be a run first thing, but they will have to stretch the field, and he is the number one target. He's actually wide receiver 20 over the past 4 weeks with no less than 10.7 fantasy points. That's a decent floor if you're trying to fill in a flex spot and you're in a tough spot. I think he can get it done. At least 6 targets and 6 receptions over the last 4 games. And with Tate in the game, he will be working mainly from the right side and draws a great matchup in LaShawn Sims, allowing 13.5 fantasy points per game and 4 touchdowns on the season. So Sterling Shepard's due, and I think he gets in the end zone this week as well.
It makes me nervous playing him out there. He belongs in the slot. He really does. And he finally started to see work in the slot. And then Tate, makes this big apology and is trying to mend things with the team, make amends, with the organization. And once again, we talked about Daniel Jones and how he's not able to throw multiple touchdowns in the game. It's just like thing after thing after thing that just makes me nervous about playing, Sterling Shepard, or even picking him up off waivers and wasting money on him. This isn't somebody who's going to go off and have a huge week. He could give you a floor, sure, but I need to see him get more opportunities to score touchdowns. And what does he have, like 1 touchdown on the season so far?
Yeah, he had 1 in week 7 against Philly, and that was it.
Yeah, his spontaneity is it's too sketch for me to trust. We're going into a playoff run, guys. Like, this is not something that you want to play around with it and get cute with. Like I said, I mean, he could provide you with a decent floor, but he could also implode your team. Like, that's not what I want. So I'm going to stay away from Sterling Shepard personally. I think he's a waiver wire waste, and I think that he could actually hurt your team more than he helps your team overall.
Yeah, I agree.
Damn, are we on the same page with everything today, Nate?
I don't know, man.
Apparently, not all of the things. I think I disagree with you here coming up soon, possibly.
Okay.
The reason I'm iffy about Shepard, I love him in the slot, but like you said, like Tate's been going back to get the slot plays, and I don't trust Daniel Jones. I think that's my biggest issue with Sterling Shepard. I love Shepard, probably with a different quarterback playing in the slot more. But if it's Daniel Jones and they're running him out wide, I can't do it. Especially heading into the playoffs, I can't trust it. I feel like I'll get burned.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup's great, but I can't get behind it now. Let's bring up your next guy, Jalen Reagor, real quick. So tell us what you're feeling about Jalen Reagor. Why is he a guy that you're picking up off waivers this week? Because I'll tell you what, like he's weird. Like, he's really weird, and I cannot wait to talk about him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have all the trust in the world about Jalen Reagor. He's got a really low floor last 3 games with only 8.7 fantasy points. Oh, must be the airborne time.
Yep, the Jets
but he
are
does
overhead.
Jets are overhead. But he may fly out this week. Speaking of Jets, great matchup this week against Seattle, who's dead last, allowing 33.7 fantasy points per game. And he moves around a lot. He doesn't just. And if he can line up in the slot, he lines up in the slot about 22% of his routes. He could see a decent amount of targets. Last week we saw Larry Fitzgerald 8 for 62 and 14.2 fantasy points. I think he could be I think he could start being more useful if he gets in sync with Carson Wentz. He's got a pretty good playoff matchup with New Orleans, Arizona, and then Dallas. So yeah, he is somebody I may not be playing, but definitely a stash to see what he can do going forward.
So here's my issue first off with the matchup, okay? Seattle went out and they acquired, Carlos Dunlap, added another piece to their defense, and they've gotten way better with their pass rush. Prior to week 9 and before that, they allowed over 200 yards receiving to the wide receiver in every game except for one, and that was up against the Vikings. Obviously, the Vikings, went run heavy in that game. And they've allowed like 400 yards, 330 yards, 405 yards, 351, like massive chunks of yards. But in the past 2 weeks, up against the Rams, who have great wide receivers, and up against the Cardinals, who have very good wide receivers, they have only allowed 192 yards and 169 yards. That is, outside of the Vikings game, the 2 lowest passing games or receiving games for wide receivers. On top of that, teams are beating the Seahawks as of late in the slot because of this pass rush. They're able to get more pressure on them, so they're hitting guys like Larry Fitzgerald off these quick releases. So for me, moving forward, Jalen Reagor makes me a little bit nervous, but then I went and I pulled up his stats, and this is weird. So like he's gotten, 6.5 points, 8.1 points, 8.7, 9.2, 11.2. Like those are not great stats, but that's still a pretty decent floor for a deep target receiver. Like when it comes to his receptions, 4 receptions, 4 receptions, 4 receptions, 3 receptions. And then week 1, he only had 1 reception up against the best team in the league up against wide receiver. So like he's getting consistency. And then when we look at his receiving yards, 41 receiving yards, 47 receiving yards, 55 receiving yards, 52 receiving yards. Like it's all almost consistent every single week. You don't see this out of these deep threat players. It's absolutely like it's almost baffling to an extent. So they're making sure that they give him opportunities. But where these opportunities come, I think are going to be crucial for this matchup. And like we talked about with the pressure that they're now applying from the Seattle front 7, it's going to make me nervous for Carson Wentz. Is he going to be able to stay in the pocket and deliver a deep ball to Jalen Reagor? I like him moving forward, with these matchups, right? We have Seattle 32nd up against wide receiver. Green Bay is a little bit tougher, but then you have New Orleans. You have Arizona. You've got Dallas. I mean, New Orleans is 16th. Arizona is 26th. Dallas is 31st, all up against wide receivers. So we could see some massive, massive upside games. So I think for me, Jalen Reagor, instead of going out there and playing him or, picking him up and playing him right up against the Seattle Seahawks right off the bat, I'm probably not going to do, and I'm probably going to hold him through Green Bay and then hope to see some positive signs from him and try and play him up against New Orleans, try and play him up against Arizona and up against Dallas, in that championship run. I know it's a little bit nerve-wracking playing these rookies in the playoffs, but, if we see some positive signs up against Seattle and up against Green Bay, I like him moving forward. He's worth a stash for at least 2 or 3 weeks.
I have a hard time with him just because of Carson Wentz. And if there's any pressure on Wentz, man, he gets nervous, which I understand because he's getting beat up this year. I loved Travis Fulgham. I've since traded him a couple of places. I've got Reagor stashed in Dynasty, but I dropped him. I traded him in redraft one place, dropped him in another because nobody would trade for him, and I just needed the roster spot. I just don't trust him going into the playoffs. I see what you're saying, Chase, with the upside possibly. I just don't think it's going to in actuality be there.
Yeah, this might be more of like the lower end guys like that make it into the playoffs. They're kind of like dragging ass and they don't have the same roster because maybe their roster's beat up. Maybe they dealt with an injury. Right. But if you're that guy, like, that needs an upside because you're going to be facing some juggernaut of a team, right, in the playoffs. Like this guy is worth a pickup now so you can stash him on the back end of your bench and hope for the best. But he's a pickup and stash guy, not a pickup and play guy for me.
Right.
Now, let's go on to, let's see who we have next. We have got Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick, tell me why you like Tim Patrick, sir. What you got for me?
I really don't like him too much, but he is coming off his second biggest game of the season, 5 for 119 yards on 8 targets. And this one, if you're going to pick him up and play him this week, it all depends on the health of Marshawn Lattimore. If he is active, then yeah, I would stay away. But the Saints 20th against the wide receiver, allowing 24.9 fantasy points. Tim Patrick's gone over 100 yards 3 times this season, and I believe he has become Locke's favorite target in tough matchups.
Nate, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, so as the resident Bronco fan here, I'm just not a big fan of Tim Patrick right now. I liked him earlier in the season. He showed flashes of being pretty great, but now you've got KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy, and Hamler's kind of emerged as a target. He's actually pulling, I do believe, KJ Hamler is pulling the same amount of targets as Tim Patrick per game. And I think that Patrick's probably going to be coming down. I have him a couple places. I'm looking to trade him. I'm looking to drop him. And if I'm deep enough, I'll keep him on my bench just in case something happens. Just not hot on him.
Nate, you know that this is going on a podcast, right? So when you point your thumb up, you're actually going to have to say that because not everybody can see you.
Look, I think Hamler's on his way up. I think Patrick's on his way down. He's a guy, if you can get something for him, if you haven't passed your trade deadline, I'd do it. But otherwise, I'd drop him. And I promise no more hand motions.
No, you can make hand motions. You just have to say it too at the same time. So, no, it's something as to where, when we sit there, we break it down. Can you actually tell us what happened at the end of the game? Because I didn't see the end of the game on Sunday, and he got 61 of his yards. The reason why he broke 100 is because he got 61 of his yards on the last play of the game when they were trying to waste time or something.
So honestly, I was in the middle of making green chili and I didn't see it.
Oh, great. The resident Broncos fan doesn't even watch the whole game.
Right. Well, I have a kid, man. So I try as much as I can. I know you are. I'm just giving you shit back.
Okay, I'll take it.
It was probably junk. I mean, my guess from what I heard, it was just a junk time play.
Yeah, they were pretty much just trying to. It was 4th down, so they couldn't just run the ball because if they stopped him right away, then they would still have one shot left. So they gave it to Tim Patrick. It ended up being like a 61-yard play, last play of the game, just trying to run out the clock.
Yeah, just hucking it down the field.
Yeah, so this right here, Tim Patrick is the perfect example, just like Devontae Freeman was, right? Just like Devontae Freeman, this is the perfect waiver wire trap ad. You don't do this, guys. Like, you do not add this guy. And this is probably one of the most strongly, suggested guys I felt so far because I saw a bunch of people talking about adding him. And, they're sitting there and they're looking at the numbers overall instead of breaking it down. And this could absolutely crush your fantasy hopes and dreams. It's a weird situation, right? And I'm not fading him because of the, 61 yards coming or how he got this yards, but I'm fading him because he has the Saints who finally have a healthy secondary for the most part, which James brought up. Even without their secondary though, right? The Saints have still ranked 16th up against wide receivers. That's the easiest matchup that the Broncos have for the whole rest of the season. After that, they got the Saints. After the Saints, they have Kansas City, who's 5th up against the wide receiver. They've got Carolina, who's 11th up against the wide receiver. They've got Buffalo, who's 9th up against the wide receiver and looking like a whole new animal compared to what they were when the season started. And the Chargers, who are doing the same sort of thing, they're 6th up against wide receiver, and they're looking like the Chargers of last year in that secondary in a big portion of their games up against the wide receiver. I mean, we talk about shutdown guys. Like, this is a perfect example of a trap play. Do not pick up Tim Patrick. And if you own him, like Nate said, I'm dropping him. So
fair enough.
There is one guy that I believe is not on here. I might be messing up again. Let's see if I'm messing up or not.
No, he's not on there. And I went ahead and looked at his availability. So go ahead, say who he is.
Corey Davis at about 60% or so availability, right?
I have him at 49% of availability over the 3 leagues, the consensus ownership. So, yeah, he's available, and I'm just not convinced. He's a spot play just like some of the other ones. A.J. Brown gets the targets. We see Anthony Ferkser getting more targets, Jonnu Smith getting targets, and they really don't throw the ball more than 20, 30 times a game.
Yeah, so
I'm not convinced with Corey Davis. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay to be wrong. But no,
I'm not wrong. He almost made the list.
No, I mean, with Corey Davis, he's up against the Indianapolis Colts, very similar to how we talked about Michael Pittman. He did very well up against the Colts. Not great, but he still was startable, right? Gave you double-digit fantasy points, had 5 receptions for 67 yards up against the Colts. But if we sit there and we look at his receptions outside of, let's see, Chicago, where he had a matchup against Fuller over there, Kyle Fuller, which is an absolute just shutdown corner. And then up against Jacksonville, where he had to face Henderson, he's given you at least 5 receptions in every single game. Meanwhile, when we look at it, he's given you touchdowns so far in 3 games, which isn't great, but I'll still take those 3 games. And then when we sit there and we look at the yardage, right? 113 yards last week up against Baltimore, who's everybody's telling me, oh, Marcus Peters is going to shut him down. They didn't shut him down. He had Cincinnati, right? 128 yards on 8 receptions and a touchdown. We had Denver, 7 receptions, 101 yards. And I wasn't going to even bring up Denver up until Nate reminded me that he's a Broncos fan and that Corey Davis demolished, the Broncos earlier in the season. So you get a very, very high floor in most cases with Corey Davis, right? If he's not going to face a shutdown type corner. Meanwhile, when we look at the cornerbacks, right? Like you see Indianapolis, you get a little bit scared because you think it's a tough matchup. Let's look at the wide receivers so far that the Colts have faced and done well against. Like Devontae Adams, we can't talk about him because he put up 106 yards on him, right? And a touchdown on 7 receptions. But if we sit there, we look at it, right? We have the Ravens wide receiver corps, right? We have the Lions with Marvin Jones Jr. and Hall. We've got the Bengals on T. Higgins' first breakout game, by the way, 125 yards. They also allowed 96 yards to A.J. Green. The Browns, who did not throw the ball barely at all against them, right? I mean, the receivers had 12 total receptions in that game. The Bears, who, by the way, Allen Robinson still had 7 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown, and the Bears are terrible. Then we have the Jets wide receivers, who, by the way, Braxton Berrios still got 64 yards and a touchdown. And then the Colts, I mean, the Vikings, who didn't pass at all that game. They had 14 passing attempts directed to wide receivers. Meanwhile, the week 1 stuff, we had, 3 touchdowns scored by the Jaguars wide receivers. So although they haven't faced a great wide receiver schedule, they're still letting up points. And so that big number 7 is scary and all, but I mean, who else did they face? Nobody. So I love Corey Davis to be in a smash spot this week. He provides a very high floor with a decent ceiling. Maybe not through the roof ceiling, but a very decent ceiling. Nate, how you feeling?
I'm the same, man. I've got him a couple places, and he's been huge for me. I mean, he's consistently scoring points above 10. You know, we're getting double digits, except for the 1 week against Chicago, where he only had the 3 targets. Even some of his lower output games, he had the 3 catches against Jacksonville. He still had 13 points. I mean, if he's out there on waivers, he's a guy. I'd spend 15, 20% of my fab on him if I don't already have him.
I'd probably go 15%.
Yeah,
I'd probably go 15%. But, dude, this whole waiver year has been so messed up because of how many injuries and stuff. Like, you can get away with a lot cheaper prices than what most people are used to getting away with. So,
true.
All right, let's go ahead and hop over to Kadero Hodge for a deep league ad. This is just deep leagues, guys. Keep that in mind. Kadero Hodge is a deep league ad because he is a deep threat. And he's got Jacksonville. We don't know what's happened with Henderson. And, of course, we have Tennessee after that. I don't care about volume with him. I don't care that he saw, 3 targets this past week, because guess what? He still gave you 73 yards in a game where they were completely pass heavy. It was a wet game. You know, this game up against Jacksonville could be a little bit cleaner of a game. And guess what? Jacksonville just gave up 4 passes of 20-plus yards to the Steelers last week. So Kadero Hodge could give you that huge upside. If you need a smash play, a high upside play, if you're projected to lose by 30 points, you know, he might be able to make up some of that ground for you. You guys have anything to add for Kadero Hodge?
I'm just looking at his stat line now. I mean, yeah, dude, I'll buy it.
And I'll add to that with the schedule coming up: Jacksonville, Tennessee, all right, Baltimore, okay, but the Giants and then the Jets in Week 16 for your finals. Like, if you're in a deep league and you need somebody to rely on, you can watch him grow throughout your fantasy playoffs. And if he blossoms, we know Jarvis Landry is going to get the main coverage everywhere he goes. So yeah, I think Kadero Hodge could be a nice deep ad. Yeah.
Cooterdoodle coming in with, y'all have fab left?
Not much. Not much.
I love it. Absolutely love it.
Only in the leagues that I'm winning.
All right, so let's go ahead and bounce over to tight end. Pretty sure we covered everybody, right? Yeah, everybody's done. So let's bounce over to tight end. Let's start out with your first one, Robert Tonyan. Tell us why you liked Robert Tonyan as a pickup this week.
Well, first of all, you have to understand the tight ends coming off the waiver wire, they're a dart throw. Most of them need a touchdown to be relevant. But Robert Tonyan finally back on track with Rodgers, got a touchdown in week 11, and it should have been 2. If you guys saw the play where he threw the ball to Devontae Adams in the end zone and Adams was double covered, Tonyan was wide open in the end zone. And they get the Bears this week, 22nd versus the tight end, allowing at least 8.9 fantasy points per game. Then the Eagles right after that. He's a spot play, honestly, but every tight end, if you're picking him up off the waivers, is usually a dart throw outside of the top 3.
I think he's a good ad. I love Robert Tonyan. And I think with the schedule, Chicago, Philly, Detroit, Carolina, I mean, there's no reason he can't have a touchdown, 2 touchdowns, explode. Rodgers obviously loves him. He's obviously been targeting him. I keep waiting for him to have another huge 3-touchdown game. I think it's coming.
He should have had it this week. Definitely.
Yeah, you guys pretty much, covered it for me. If Tanyan's out there, you can grab him, but just keep in mind he's probably going to be really hot, so don't try and outbid anybody. There are other tight ends that could absolutely go off this week, and I think that Tonyan, although he has a great, a very safe floor with a significant upside, it's something that's where I don't want to go blow my entire load on Tonyan just because he is kind of, sketch. Up against the Bears, love the matchup, and he's got Philly the week after that, so I can get on board with it 100%. Let's talk about Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, and that's the same reason why you don't want to blow all your fab on Tonyan. If guys like Dalton Schultz are still available who will probably get underbidded, and you can win Schultz easier than you can win Tunyon. And sneakily, he is the tight end number 11 in PPR scoring. He's got a great matchup this week against Washington, who's 20th versus the tight end. And Cowboys seem to be hyped up coming out of their bye week. And I think Schultz is becoming Andy Dalton. It's the Dalton to Dalton connection. His safety net. You saw it last week, 4 for 25 and a touchdown on 6 targets. And then they get Cincy and the Eagles in weeks 14 and 16. So not only could you pick him up this week and play him as a spot play, he may be good for you in your playoffs going up against the Bengals and the Eagles.
Yeah, I like that one, man. I love Dalton Schultz. He's been quietly fairly consistent this year. I mean, he's had a few games where he hasn't been phenomenal, but like you said, the Dalton connection. I mean, we saw it last week. I think it will continue. I love it. I love Dalton Schultz. He's a guy I've got rostered a couple of places, and going into the playoffs, like, I'm excited about it, especially with the schedule coming up.
Yeah, I can't get mad at it at all. The schedule looks good. Everything looks sexy, but there's actually a guy that I want more than Dalton Schultz. Jordan Reed, baby. It's Jordan Reed time, right? You love him when he's healthy. Obviously, that's, the struggle. But, dude, check out this schedule for Jordan Reed. The Rams, the Bills, Washington, and Dallas. Like, that's just sex. That's just pure sex. For fantasy, that is sex right there. I mean, we talk about his usage this past week, and he was utilized as I believe the second top pass catcher. So he's going to be a major player for me, and he's going to help me make that run. And he's actually going to help me win fantasy championships because Jordan Reed is the tight end that you want to pick up this week off of waivers. He's got floor and he's got upside.
14.3% owned. So, yeah, he's out there in a wide spread of leagues for sure.
People are afraid to use him, man.
Well, as long as he stays healthy, I'm not afraid to use him at all. I love him. I've loved him all season, as long as he's healthy.
But are you going to pick him up off waivers? Because this is the waiver wire show.
Yeah, I probably would do it.
You probably would do it.
Oh, I'm not in a pinch at tight end anywhere. So, but yes, if I was in a pinch at tight end, if I needed a tight end, I'd grab Reed. I'm not going to spend a ton of fab on him because of the health issues. But yeah, I'd grab him for sure.
I think this is what I would do. I would put a certain amount of my fab, a certain percentage of my fab on the two others, the Tunyon and the Schultz, and then that third bid, you always back yourself up on waivers, especially with the fab system. You put a small bid on Jordan Reed and make sure you get at least one. That way you can rely on him. At least if he is healthy, he's definitely a play for you, and he may actually have a little bit of probability going forward. So, yeah, Jordan Reed.
Jordan Reed actually makes me feel the safest out of any of these guys, and it's kind of crazy to say because it's Jordan Reed.
That's iffy. I don't know about all that.
All right, guys, that's actually going to close out our episode for today. We appreciate you guys for coming in. Nate and Chef, do you want to let everybody know where to find you? Nate, you want to start out with you?
Yeah, so on Twitter, you can find me at JanateJack2017. All my content over at In Between Media, at IBT_media, and inbetweenmedia.com. And with the Join Our Circle crew, every Tuesday here with Chase, I'm around.
Love it, man. Chef, what's up, man? Where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at FF_Chef. Like we said at the top of the show, I'm a writer for Ball Blast Football. Go ahead and check out my articles over there. I just did a deep dive on Antonio Gibson, your boy. I know you love some Antonio Gibson, Chase.
I sure do. Absolutely.
Then you can find all my podcast work at TIR_pod and the Tilt is Real fantasy football website at www.thetiltisreal.com. And with us at Join Our Circle _ with the Fantasy Six Pack every week. So, yeah, check us out.
Yeah, man. Absolutely love it. Make sure you guys go check out at Join Our Circle. And if you guys want to check me out on Twitter, FF_intervention. Once again, that's FF_intervention on Twitter, guys. We got a whole bunch of shit happening. Make sure you guys jump on before it's taken off. Absolutely love all you guys who listened in today. Thank you all for tuning in. And thank you for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.